California, uh, Iowa, Nebraska, Nevada, Utah, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. There will be a test on that later. Since 1987, Todd has focused his practice rights industry, having been given the distinction of being a Minnesota super lawyer in the area of creditors' rights. Cum laude for his bachelor's degree, cum laude for his and
okay, dealing with the issue again, I wanted to basically, this is like the perfect forum for all of us to get together and talk about what is going on with the number one threat for all of us in our industry. We can talk about all the different aspects of what we do, but the number one threat that I'm seeing is legislative initiative and ballot initiatives throughout all of our 50 states. What we're finding out is that creditors' rights, whether it's commercial or retail, or it doesn't matter, medical, is the number one target for activism for one of the two bigger parties to get voter activism. And in doing it, what they're doing is they either propose legislation in combination with the National Consumer Law Center, or they bring ballot initiatives. So unfortunately, I've had the pleasure or the displeasure of having to be engaged in two of these fights so far in the last basically 12 to 18 months. So about less than 24 months ago, a ballot initiative was enacted in the state of Arizona, which is one of our one of our three home states in our office. And that ballot initiative was really dedicated toward using and upping exemptions, and it was exaggerating amount and they called it all under the aspects of what we call medical debt. And they called basically save, it was entitled basically prevent the, I should say, the explosion of medical debt. And really what it is, it's a disguised way of providing basically free medical care. We can go down the top, but what we want to do is basically eliminate medical debt and eliminate the ability to collect medical debt by making it so outrageous to collect it that you cannot possibly do it, passing the cost on to the hospitals, on to all the rest of us to do it. So unfortunately, because of the way that it's done in Arizona, ballot initiative, all you need is 400,000 signatures. A third of those were invalid, but it was enough to put it on the ballot. And unfortunately, when basically proposed as a medical debt savior thing, everybody thought it was just about medical debt. It passed 70 to 30. So it became basically a bipartisan issue in the state of Arizona, which led to us not being able to garnish anybody if they made $53,000 or less, or garnish a bank account with 10,000, actually 5,000 of a joint account, 10,000. So basically, post-judgment in the state of Arizona became minuscule compared to what it was previously. And so that's what happened in phase one. Then what's happening now is you're seeing that the activists are targeting states in which the House, the Senate, and the governor's office are being held by Democrats. And what they're doing is they are proposing legislation when they can't put it on the ballot. They're proposing legislation and they're using really outrageous legislation. So basically, it's like, we're going to put a bunch of stuff, or we're going to put a bunch of stuff in there and let's just see what sticks. Okay. So just recently in the state of Minnesota, which is one of the we call it trifecta state. Now, I see my good friend Danny Spilantro is here. You got the same thing going on in Illinois, but that's also a trifecta state. It's defined as a state in which the House, the Senate, and the governor's office are all held by Democrats. It was championed by the Minnesota Attorney General, and what it did is, again, big splash in a big splash in a news conference by the Attorney General that we are going to put a stop to medical debt, that people cannot afford this, that this is not what they signed up for, this is unlike any other debt, and that we're going to protect consumers in regards to that. And what they didn't do is look at any of the fine print. They just took the National Consumer Law Group checklist of all of these different things that they've wanted to do for years in all of the states, and specifically Minnesota. And so what they ended up doing is proposing a bill of which even the bill's authors and the bill's sponsor didn't even know what was in the bill. And it included such things. Not only we talk about the exemption stuff, that you couldn't garnish anybody who made $60,000 or less, or somebody bank garnish or $5,000 and less, but also basically remove medical debt from all credit reporting whatsoever. It also removed the what's called the necessity statute in Minnesota, where they could get the husband and wife liable for necessities. It also provided for that a person, they expanded the definition of collectors. So somebody, I see, we got our friends here at Lango Lakes here. They would have been included as a collector in the state of Minnesota and given a private, Minnesota residents would have been given a private cause of action for anyone who would attempt to collect on their own debt. So banks and any institution and any company, and then they expanded the debt to include debts owed by small businesses. So they get that too. So what they were doing then is they were greatly expanding everything. There was a whole bunch of more stuff. They were going to take the statute of limitations, bring it from 6 years down to 3 years. They were going to get rid of the entire judgment renewal statute, which was 10 years, and they were going to move it down to 5 years with no chance to renew it. And it was a whole laundry list of stuff, hoping that all of us were sleeping at the wheel and not seeing what it is. But because of our experience that we had in Arizona, and also a lot of the trade associations, including this one, CC of A, Commercial Law League, IECC, RMAI, and NCBA, all of them got together along with the Minnesota Bankers Association, the American Bar Association, and about the Better Business Bureau, and everybody got together and they all worked together in a coalition. We have a call tomorrow on this, but to the point where that coalition was able to hit it and hit it hard with the lobbying efforts. So as we speak today, we've been able to whittle down that bill. So almost all the provisions that we talked about are gone, except for the medical debt thing, which has now been carved out, which is really what they're most concerned about, and the exemption stuff, which we're playing with right now. They've eased up on a little bit of what they want to do, but we still have a lot of work to do. And all of this is done under the aspects of medical debt, but what they hide behind it is really involves commercial debt. And it involves every other kind of debt that we're talking about. It has no, but they all put it under medical debt, so it creates that trigger. So what my speak today is that not so much about what's going to happen in Minnesota, because we're going to have to play that is one effect now, but to put all of you guys on notice, to be aware of what is going on, how there's 17 other states, and we can get you that list later. There are 17 other states that fit into the trifecta world where they're going to be attacked. States that I know that right now that is definitely in Michigan, definitely in Illinois, and definitely in Massachusetts, because I've seen the bills, okay? So the bottom line is that we all need to know that it greatly affects our ability to collect, and also puts in extreme regulatory, the regulatory provision, basically regulatory requirement, not only for retail, but also commercial stuff. So the key and the message I'm sending all to you, because of what we all did in Minnesota, with everybody coming together the way it is, we're able to attack it, and we're able to show that and lobby the right people in the right situation. So each one of us, again, last year, this little thing in Arizona cost my firm almost $2 million of revenue. And I'm not kidding, there's the economic effect that it can have, and which led to a lot of layoffs within my own firm. And a lot of people are out of work because of what they did. And they call it in the aspects of protecting consumers, and it really isn't. It's really done because they want to activate. I'll tell you another example. In the state of Nevada, they're bringing out a ballot initiative to basically do the same thing. There's two parts of it. The first is to hire the exemption, just like everybody else, and then to put a limitation on rate to 36%. The reason they're doing this isn't really for they desperately want to elect a Democrat governor. And so they feel if they put this on the ballot, it will be able to enable them to, because they know it's a 70-30 issue, that they're going to be able to bring in a Democrat governor. And what it is to ignite voter activism in an otherwise depressed voter state, especially for the Democrat Party. So that's kind of where we're at right now with that. I'm bringing everybody together on this because everyone, doesn't matter if you're an agency, doesn't matter if you're in the next position, doesn't matter if you're one of us in attorneys, it doesn't matter if you do primarily medical, if you're doing commercial, or you're doing retail. We're all equally affected, especially when it comes to what they call it, their buzzword is called modernization of the wage garnishment, or excuse me, modernization of the garnishment process. What it really means is creating a scenario whereby we cannot collect what we normally were able to collect. Now, I'm going to put another throw on this. Another perspective on this is that I don't necessarily disagree that modernization is needed or not needed. I think it is needed. There are a lot of archaic laws out there that make no sense, that we all need to sit together and come together as a group with the different organizations and to modernize the process and also modernize the numbers. We don't want to get in a situation like we did in Arizona a few years back, where I had some poor janitor literally making $17, $18 an hour, caught him with a judgment that he obtained 10 years ago. He finally figured out where he worked, and the guy basically had $500 a month to live on. That cannot happen. That's not what we want. We just want to be able to do what we need to do so people can live and eat. We're not putting into a situation where people can't afford to eat and pay and do that stuff. We want to make payment arrangements. We want them to be able to live and eat along as they pay back their debt. That's all what we want to do. We also want to make sure that we have a sacred cow in the commercial world. We don't want to extend, like we're going to do in Minnesota, create a private cause of action similar to the FDCPA for commercial debt. And that's what was the most fearful with Annette and crew that we were going to establish in Minnesota. I'm very proud to be a member of CC of A and how we were leaders within that. We were right out in front of it. We were making things happen, and we were one of the reasons why they backed off big time with it. I also want to thank Mike Thielen, who was willing to come and testify. We can testify. We can come and support us at that. Thank you, Michael, because you need to hear from small and large businesses alone what it really means to our economy when you sit there and start cutting off stuff like this, because it affects our ability to, and companies will take second looks about extending credit and doing that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my speech. One of the things we're going to say, the tackle in Minnesota, what we're going to end up doing, probably going to end up, I wanted desperately to push this into the summer so we can have a gun to our head as they were trying to desperately to pass this. It's still possible. We're going to set up the table and we're going to try to negotiate something that makes sense and throw in some stuff to modernize the garnishment process. For instance, permanent wage guards as opposed to this renewal every 90 to 120 days. Things that will make the process a lot easier for everybody and for consumers and debtors alike. But unfortunately not given the time to do it, and it's kind of what we're up against. So with that, I'll take some of the questions that people have in that.
Sure, Todd. Dan Spilotro, Danny asked, Todd, do you think that this is a temporary stay and the trifecta states will reload and try to do this again down the road?
Yeah, they'll be oftentimes using it. Danny, this is all for political purposes. This is all about power. Okay, let's not be, whether you're Democrat or Republican, okay, we use these issues, whether it be abortion, whether it be tax cuts, whether it be immigration, you're seeing that happen right now. Each of the party in power or the party outside of power will use issues to activate voters to get them to do it. And when they're in a position of power in the trifecta world, they can push things through. I saw in Minnesota, there were a whole list of stuff that never would have ever passed in Minnesota, but they saw the opportunity and they were able to make it happen. And they passed a whole bunch of stuff in Minnesota that, quite frankly, were not very business friendly. And we actually have something in Minnesota, the Minneapolis City Council right now, where it may result in Uber and Lyft leaving Minnesota as a result of that. Because careful for what you wish for. At some point, businesses say, nope, I don't want to do business in the state of Minnesota. As Land O'Lakes knows, time and time again, what's happening with the state of Minnesota is more and more people are going to leave the state of Minnesota, or companies, if they're going to continue to operate this way. So no, it's not it's going to happen every time. We have to be out in front of it. And the way to be out in front of it is two things. Number one, there's a couple of things. Number one, to engage your lobbyists, whoever it is, government affairs people. Number two, to engage with one or two state and local state senators or local representatives that you can. And that means writing a check. You don't have to write a check for thousands, it's hundreds. Writing a check with them, meeting with them, talking about the issue. So if something comes up, you are there and able to be right out in front of them to talk with about. And sometimes it's actually even better to have them on the Democrat side because they're the bigger threat to our industry as a whole, and get them to understand we get it, we understand it, and we want to be there for a source of information for them as they move forward. Be real concerned, Danny, about states, and I think Illinois is one of them, where they have ballot initiatives. So what happens is that if the activists aren't able to do it through the state, they're able to do it through the ballot. And if they're able to do it through the ballot, we're dead in the water. It becomes very difficult on that kind of an issue because, again, it's a 70-30 issue. And if people don't understand, and when it's come out in that issue, they can lie like they did in Arizona. There is nothing stopping them from doing it. So it becomes a very frustrating piece for us. Hope that answers the question, Jenny.
Todd, have you seen, other than Arizona, any other states?
Well, I just talked about Nevada.
Right, Nevada.
Nevada had a ballot initiative. Michigan has a particular act. They tried doing it last year. It didn't quite get out of committee. Massachusetts has one on board right now. Indiana has one. Illinois has one. I was talking to Fred Billett about that, Danny. I probably might want to talk about that. State by state by state, they're trying it. Minnesota is hitting it because it has been given a lot of steam by going forward. A lot of them are caught in committees and stuff right now. But again, state by state, you have to look, number one, to see if your state has a ballot initiative process, like Arizona did. And if so, what does it take to get something on the ballot? That's the number one. The number two thing is, engage with, if you're a lawyer, engage with your Creditors' Rights Bar Association. They all have them. It's usually done through the National Creditors Bar Association. They have, each of these individual states have it. Become engaged with them. They each have lobbyists so that you can be aware of what's happening. From our standpoint, Annette, from the commercial standpoint, it's more about being in the know of seeing and being able to strategic alliances with all the big other trade associations, just like we did in Minnesota when these bills come up.
I don't know how many saw my email, but we did have, in addition to Mike Thielen from Land O'Lakes, who sits on our Independent Standards Board, we also had Kelly Cronin ready to give testimony. I don't know, Todd, if you mentioned that my internet was going in and out.
No, I did not. Yeah, I did say it would be good for that to happen.
So, if something comes up in your state, beware, we're going to come find you to testify.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other questions for Todd? Ben Vinci says, I'm a board member of the Colorado Creditors Bar. We have a lobbyist, but we are lacking funding. We need more support. Did you want us to write a check, Ben?
Absolutely. I mean, this stuff, we've got the trifecta in Colorado. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we've got the trifecta in Colorado, and I testified to the legislature last week on raising filing fees. And we're out of money. We don't have the money. The lobbyist is costing us $50 grand a year. And we need support. I mean, even if it's a few $100s or something like that, if you do business in Colorado, Colorado is ripe for all of these changes. And it's going to get ugly if we don't get more support.
Well, Ben, I got a question for you. Has the Colorado Creditors Bar or your lobbyist gotten money from RMAI?
So I don't know currently that we have. There was an issue a few years ago regarding garnishments and in Colorado, and the RMAI differed in the strategy from the Colorado Creditors Bar. And so they went two different directions where RMAI wanted to fight the bill entirely, and Colorado Creditors Bar Association decided to take a negotiation road and change the amount of exemptions, increase the amount that the garnishee or garnisher would be able to take. And so that's the route the Creditors Bar Association took. RMA took a hard stand of no deals, nothing. And obviously that didn't fly. And I don't think that they've contributed since that bill.
That's unfortunate because I'm sitting on the RMAI board and I definitely would have. You've got to engage. Having that kill, obviously whoever gave them the advice was wrong. You're better off engaging with them, sitting them at the table and working through this, and then also seeing opportunities to enhance the process and make it better. That's the strategy. You use it in quote unquote, we want to partner with you to modernize the garnishment process. So you don't get the worst part, you get something. So then if something new comes up, they come to you and partner with you other than trying to play hardball with them.
I agree. I think we could re-engage with RMAI and see if they're willing, but we are short funding. We have basically enough funding to pay our lobbyist for the last month, and we're out of money.
Okay, well, you can get off me off a line on that, and we'll talk to him about that. Okay. And then
Any other
go ahead.
other questions?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my question, Annette, but do you see a growing trend in these regulators trying to classify, or legislators trying to classify small businesses as consumers? I think you and I, Todd, were at the same conference where CFPB, the speaker from CFPB, was saying that they were looking at that.
CFPB tried doing it initially, just got back on it. Minnesota did it, as you saw. That is a trend that you're going to see over and over and over. It's part of the laundry list of stuff. If you want their playbook, it's sitting in the first Minnesota bill. It's right there. Lowering the statute of limitation, getting rid of renewal, bringing the judgment number from whatever it is, bring it down in half. Increasing the exemption, creating private causes of action, bringing small debt into it. That's what CFPB started with. But then they realized I won't get a lot of support on that. So they started, then we're starting to pluck it into to states where they have the trifecta, where they may be able to plow it through. And your biggest, look, I'm going to tell you, your biggest impact, everyone sitting on this call, your biggest impact is to get a hold of your local state legislature or state senator, write a check for $100 to $500, have coffee with them. They will have coffee with you, and you'll explain your issues. That is the biggest impact that you can have from the ground up, especially in the trifecta states. And then hiring the best damn lobbyists you can, who in the state of Minnesota, we hired the lobbyist who was in charge of fundraising for the governor of the state of Minnesota. So those are the kind of people that you need to get on your side with it. It's warfare. And what's at stake is your living, your ability to earn money.
Just like we have the regulators, maybe we should start inviting the legislators to our conferences.
It's actually an opportunity. As part of the RMAI, I'm gonna be making an invitation to the House Majority Whip, who I happen to know, Tom Emmer from Minnesota. You need to engage these guys so you know, especially if you're in a particular state and doing something. The governor is not a bad idea. The attorney general is not a bad idea because they're usually the ones that spearhead this stuff, along with maybe some local, state, and federal.
Any other questions for Todd? Okay. So I put in the chat that we have 10 sessions coming up at the semi-annual conference in Las Vegas, just like this, as informative with our thought leaders like Todd, and we have the regulators and credit grantors coming. So if you haven't registered yet, please do so. Umberto, any other last thoughts of our 20-minute, our first inaugural 20-minute talk?
No, I think it was very informative, Todd. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mike Thielen from Land of Lakes, also he's a member of our Independent Standards Board. Thank you. Mike was involved also in that Minnesota legislation, like Todd had mentioned. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for being on our standards board. And thank all of you for attending. We really appreciate it.